Welcome to Witch Talks, the series for spiritual seekers, witches, and enlightened souls. I'm Hana the Suburban Witch, professional tarot reader, astrologer, and witch, and I hope you're ready to get up close and personal with your favourite witches. Hello, my gorgeous darling. Thank you for being here with me today. It is lovely to share your energy with you. I have a lovely black coffee that I am sipping on, which feels nice and cozy, but it's also a really hot day, so it kind of makes a hot coffee less cozy, if you know what I mean. And I'm busy making sure that we have water available in our fridge. All of my witchy jars are being put to good use, because if you are not local to Southeast Queensland, where I am, or if you're listening in the future, we are expecting a cyclone to hit this week, and this is my first cyclone. I'm a little bit nervous. So there's meant to be up to 1 meter of rain, possibly daily. The reports keep changing, so flooding is likely to happen, obviously high winds, that sort of a thing. So we are hunkering down and preparing not to leave the house. It's giving lockdown vibes, and just making sure we have enough fresh water and food for a few days. So send me all your good love and energy. But none of that is what we're talking about today. Today, we're doing a Hana Help Me episode of the podcast. If you have a question for me, please send it through to info@suburbanwitchery.com. And I'll add it to my beautiful list of wonderful questions to answer on either this season or the next. Now, today's question comes in from LoLo. And she says, Hana, help me. What are your thoughts on deck modifications? I'm switching between, yes, do it, they're your cards and you'll make them even more yours, versus the designer designed these for a reason, and making changes may change their intentions and be disrespectful to the deck. Thanks, Lolo. Well, my dear, this is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful topic to talk on, so thank you for sending in your question. And it is the very same dilemma that I have struggled with, because I really want to do this. I really, really want to modify a couple of decks that I have, but then a part of me is like, what if I ruin it? What if I do it wrong? What if I make it worse? What if I'm really bad at modding decks? What if all these things? And I am very artistic, Lolo. I know you are too. When you're an artistic person, you can see the possibilities, but then you also have the wisdom and experience of knowing that things can go poorly. And whilst tarot decks are not the most costly art thing you can do in terms of modifying tarot decks, they can cost $30 to $50 on average. I have a deck that was, actually I have 2 decks that were over $100, so I wouldn't touch those. That's my personal one. And I'd probably choose a deck I wasn't loving to try and make me love it more by modifying it. That's my personal opinion. But we are going to dive a little bit deeper than this. So, deck modding. How scandalous, the sacrilege, the audacity. But it's still very popular, and I have no qualms about it. I do understand the concept of this is the way the artist designed it, but sometimes artists get it wrong. Sorry, I'm just putting it out there. Sometimes artists, publishers, creators, whoever has made the D on a design choice, maybe they made a shitty choice. That happens, and you don't have to love it, and you can change it. Because from what I have seen from so many people in the tarot community, is sometimes people mod it and they love it a million times more afterwards. There was a girl ages ago, and I haven't seen her pop up in a while. I can't even remember what the handle was, but she was selling modified decks, as in she'd purchase them, she would modify them and then resell them, and they were stunning. They were so nice. And that was just what she did as her hobby. Kind of like how people fancy up books as well, like they'll recover them or that sort of thing, or paint the edges. That kind of a vibe. Alright, so let's first talk about why on earth would you modify your deck. Now, this is any form of card deck. And honestly, you might wish to practice on playing cards beforehand. But Oftentimes people will modify their deck because their cards are too large. And I know so many people right now who are probably nodding their head going, yep, I'd do it for that. Because why do they make decks so big you can't shuffle them? It's so frustrating. Oracle decks are a killer for this. Like, why? So, I mean, I have a couple that I just don't use them because they're so clunky in my hands. I would totally mod them, right? I would totally make them smaller. So that's one thing. Another time is people don't like the border. Maybe the border is distracting from the actual artwork. Sometimes it's to remove distractions like symbols. So for example, or another detail. So for example, the Thoth Tarot has words like failure, strife, worry. And so this is one I see all the time. People cut it down to just Lady Frida Harris's artwork so that all of those aren't coming into your reading. Some people modify their deck to make it theirs, make it super personal. I believe personally that you will have a greater attachment to your deck if you're spending that much dedicated, careful time with it. I think it will just increase the connection that you have. Now, sometimes decks are darker in tone, but the creator or publisher has decided to print it on white card so that even though the front and the back of the card are dark, the edges are kind of light, which can look really weird. So there might be some modifications around darkening the edges. And sometimes people want to change triggering words or images that they find on there. So oftentimes we'll see people trimming borders, edging, but then sometimes you can actually see people changing the artwork or the face of the card as well. Now, I have seen people staunchly on the no way Jose train where they'll never modify a deck, but I'll tell you what, that actually changes really quickly when you get a deck with a border that you find hideous. So keep an open mind. And if you are that person and then that happens to you, you can come back to this episode to find out all about deck modding and how to do it. So some ways that we can modify a tarot or oracle deck or other, insert other form of cartomancy here. Probably the most common is trimming off borders. And this is literally just trimming the deck. It makes it smaller. It might make it neater. Keeping in mind, if this is a tarot deck, that's 78 cards. If you're not a crafty person, it might be like, oh yeah, you just like cut them smaller. No, this is a lengthy process. This is requiring dexterity, focus, patience, and tools. And we will get into that. Another way people modify their deck is they might color in the edges, usually with metallic pens or ink pads, Sharpies, highlighters, any of those kinds of things. And sometimes this is a money-saving technique too, because you might want the special edition tarot deck that comes with the gold edging, but you can't afford it, so you do it yourself. Or it sells out, and so you make it fancy. Sometimes people modify their deck by adding words or adding symbols for ease of interpretation. So you might, draw the astrological symbol on the front of the card. You could draw that in the border. You could draw that on the card, hidden somewhere. You could make it fancy and gold, silver, anything like that. Make it stand out, make it subtle. But adding words and symbols on top of the cards is something people have always done. Or you might want to add features like sparkles and glitter, images, kind of like scrapbooking on top of the artwork. You are allowed to do that. Now, I've seen, it's rare, but I've seen people change fonts on the cards. Now, this can be in a way that you cover the previous font. Or what I think is more common is when people add, oh my God, what are they called? Is it called serif? When they add the serif, the little like horizontal, I'm going to look this up. Otherwise you guys are going to be like, Hannah, oh my God, what are you talking about? Yes, I was right. A serif font. So they can change a non-serif a sans serif into a serif font. So sans serif, that means no serif, is just like a straight like the letter H, for example, just 2 lines down and 1 across in the middle. A serif version of that font would have that, but then the little horizontal or stroke at the ends of each of the vertical lines, you know, like it just sort of fancies it up a little bit. It's just a little bit extra. The small lines attached to the letters. So this is definitely possible to change fonts, but it is trickier, and I don't think I have the patience for that. It's something I'm like, oh, I could totally do that, but I don't think I would. Now, storage upgrades. I'm including this in deck mods, even though it's kind of not a deck mod. So if your deck comes in a shitty box, or the box falls apart like mine have in the past, especially the flip top boxes that often cheaper decks will come in, they fall to pieces. If it's your most used deck, they will fall to pieces. So you can mod your own storage box. You could add magnet clasps. You could knit, sew, or crochet a little drawstring pocket pouch type of bag. There's lots of ways you could get really creative with this. I think it could be really fun. And then there's something that we call rebacking. And this is where you modify the appearance of the back of the cards. So sometimes people will use contact or washi tape. I've seen people fail spectacularly using spray paint, so I don't recommend that one. But basically, the ways to modify your deck are endless. The world is your oyster. Let your creative freak flag fly. Your creative freak flag fly. And have fun with it. Enjoy it. Make it yours. Be creative. And please send me photos. I would absolutely adore to see any modifications people have done. I am planning to write a blog post on this. If you're happy with me sharing them, I would be honored. Please reach out. But now we need to talk about some tips. So we've talked about ways we can modify a deck, but we might need some help with that. So number 1, don't discount using something like a black Sharpie for effective black edging on your deck. Cheap, accessible, wonderful. I'm considering doing something like this on my standard Rider-Waite Smith. I'm just a little bit worried because it is my most used deck, but the edges, they look, I don't know, discolored or something. I'm not happy with them at the moment, so I'm thinking about it. It's rustling around in the back of my brain. Now, with edging in any way, do not, I repeat, do not do the whole deck at once. Don't do it. Do not do it. So this goes for edging, but also getting all modification. If you're doing mods in one sitting, that's too much. As I said, there's a lot of cards. Take your damn time. Now, some people swear by using a chisel tip paint marker for edges, especially metallic edges. Again, I would be practicing on a cheap deck first, so you don't mess up on your actual deck. Another way is using something like a stamp pad, like a gold stamp pad for metallic edges. Again, you're doing one card at a time, okay? We're not doing the whole deck at once. You're not holding that whole deck and then stamping it down. That's not how we do this. One singular card at a time. You would do all 4 sides and then lay it flat and let it dry. Now, there is a place called the Tarot Forum online, and there's some advice from someone called Raggy Doll, which I'm going to share with you all. And they've said, I have found that even if you're extremely careful and use a chisel tip marker, you will still get subtle marks on the fronts and backs when you're edging. Sometimes it's because you slip, other times it's because the card absorbs the ink so it bleeds into the imagery. This happens way less frequently with ink pads, and usually only in places where a card is chipped. When you use a pen, it dries instantly and doesn't smudge. So if you use ink pads, there's one by Tim Holtz, like black soot is the color they're referring to here. Ink pads take longer to dry, but you can wipe off any excess or correct any mistakes. It also doesn't stick to the laminated surfaces like permanent pens do. Lay them on trays to dry. I do several layers with kitchen paper towels in between, and depending on how heavily you ink them, it can take 12 to 48 hours before they're completely dry. They do not smudge after they're dry. Go over each card several times to get a deep color and wait 48 hours before stacking them together again. Excellent advice, obviously based on Raggy Doll's experience. So thank you to them for sharing that in that tarot forum that I found and I can share with you all here. Now, if you're doing edges, as in trimming edges, there's a few ways you can do that. You can use a guillotine or rotary cutters or scissors. All of these things need to be extremely sharp when you're using them for something like this. The less efficient the cut on the edge, the more possibility of bleed from the edging when you're colouring in the edges. Because after you trim them, you're going to want to do that. It'll look better. And so permanent markers do bleed more than the ink pads, as per the advice earlier from Raggy Doll. Now, personally, as someone I am an artist. I'm a watercolour artist. I have ADHD, guys, if you didn't know. I have dabbled in all forms, but preferably most of my stuff is watercolour, and so I have done a lot of cutting of watercolour paper to paint on it with watercolours, right, which do bleed and move and things like that. And I will tell you, if your scissors are not sharp, if you have guillotined and it's pulled a little bit, or it's pressed the paper a little bit, or started to pull the layers of paper apart, that is where the paint or the bleed will accumulate and it won't look good. Guillotines also, I don't know, we got a bit of bad history because sometimes those blades aren't fully on straight. I know they're straight, but it's like they don't cut straight, or they squish instead of cutting. Personally, I'd be using scissors. That is what I will use when I do it. Now with ink pads, if you do get them, they're water soluble, so then you can wipe any excess off the front and back if you need to. But remember not to stack them all up for about 48 hours so they don't stick together. So remember, there are 78 cards. That is a lot of cutting out if it's not a skill you've used in a while. So pace yourself, there is no need to rush it. If you do end up modifying the front of the cards in terms of the artwork, I'd recommend using something like a sealing spray or a transparent contact paper to make sure that they're not going to get ruined afterwards, basically. I think modding decks can be really cute for children as well. If you have a deck that your kid is really drawn to, but it has some cards that you're not comfortable with them using, mod it, right? Like, I don't know, if you're uncomfortable with nudity, I am not. You could, I don't know, draw a bikini onto someone that's nude in the deck, right? Like, you can modify it to make it more child friendly. Or if there's a scary card, you could spray some glitter spray on it, throw on a smiley face, add stickers to it, right? Like, the possibilities are endless. Same goes if you have a fear. One of my mentees has a fear of a certain animal, and so this is something I would suggest to them or anyone else who has a fear. If that's in your deck, you could either get someone else to do this, or you could yourself, if you're up to it, modify it so that you either can't see the image that you're afraid of, or make it look silly in a way that it's less scary. So if you're afraid of an owl and there's the picture of an owl, you could put a smiley face sticker over its face, right? Like, you still know it's an owl, but it's not as scary, it's just silly. Something like that could be really useful. Now, there's one other aspect of deck modding that isn't really deck modding, it's really just art. And I've seen this, I've seen it with Pokemon cards. I haven't actually seen anyone do it with tarot cards, although I'm sure someone has. But it's basically where you take that one card. So let's say we pick a card and it is the star card, and you get 10 of them, right? 10 of this one card. And then with one of those like scalpel blades, you would cut out the individual bits from the card and then layer them all up into one card. I can't describe this audioly very well, can I? It basically makes a 3D piece of artwork style card that you would then display, not for using your deck. This would be almost giving it that 3D depth layered effect where you've layered them all up. If I do write this blog, I will find one of the photos or videos of how people do this, at least with Pokemon cards, to give people an idea. But that is so cool. There's so many cool things we can do with tarot cards, oracle cards, all of this. Like, I would consider doing that with the Hermit card, which is, I'm a Virgo, so that's my card. And it's a hermit year, so, it could be really cool to have a really fancy hermit card displayed on my altar. So pull out your craft supplies, pull out a deck that you're not enamored with, or a deck that has something that annoys you, and see what you can do about it. See what creative workaround you can come up with to make it better. Challenge yourself to think outside the box. Don't worry so much about ruining someone else's concept for this deck, because look, you can always buy it again, right? You could always, if you really think it's ruined or it was better before, you can always get it again. And please send me photos. All right, everyone, so I hope this has got some creative juices flowing. I know making some little tarot bag pouches is something I really, really want to do. I have some really cute fabric and I don't have a lot of it, so I thought, this will be good for that. And go and check out, on that topic, go and check out at your local fabric store, wherever that is. They usually have they often have a bargain bin, which is like the ends of the fabric roll. It's not a lot of it, and so they sort of roll it up and sell it for like $1 sometimes. That's where I often find a lot of satin, because I've been making my husband, what are they called? Pocket squares for his suit jackets whenever we go to a wedding, because we tried to find some cool ones. They're like $50. I was like, I'll make you 10 for that. You pay me 50, but I'll make you 10 of them. I have so far made him 2. We found some fat quarters at the fabric store that he liked. He picked out a few. I found some bargain bin satin, and they're really cute and quirky. Like, it's going to look really fun in his suit jackets. So check out the bargain bin, check out the fat quarters, especially when they're on sale. You can make something really, really cute and unique and personal. I used to wrap my main deck up in the leftover fabric that I had used to make all of the bow ties for the groomsmen for our wedding. And I'd made matching headbands for our flower girls. So that was special fabric, right? And even though I hadn't sewed it or anything, I just wrapped it in that. It was special, it was beautiful. And so these are ways that we can make it more connected to us and more personal. And I think tarot needs that, especially because in a way it is quite commercialized. Imagine having a deck that your mother or grandmother had modified and made into this literal work of art, and then you got gifted that. Like, the power in that would be so cool. This is what I will do for my children. I just think there's so much potential in deck modding. So I'm not of the mindset that it's sacrilegious. I think it's really, really cool. What do you think? Let me know. I would love to hear about it. I'm pretty sure on Spotify you can even comment on each of the episodes. Definitely on YouTube. No idea about Apple. I'm not an Apple person. But you can leave reviews. Please only leave positive ones. That would be helpful. Now, there are only 7 more episodes left for season 3. It feels like that's not very many at all. And after that, there will be a long break until season 4. I'm just warning you now. There definitely will be a season 4. I am planning big things for it. It just takes a bit of extra time and I need a little bit of a break. Pumping out episodes weekly gets a lot. In a good way. I love it. I love it. This isn't me complaining. It's just I want to work on my novel and a few other things in that little break time. If you want to keep up with what I'm doing, the Society is the best place to do that, or even just on my email newsletter if you're not ready for the Society. Now, next week on the podcast, we are chatting with the glorious, amazing Mandy M, all about shadow work. That episode is absolute fire. It's already up for those on the Suburban Witches Society. They can access all of the episodes far in advance of everyone else, which is really wonderful. It's a great perk. And they get the uncut behind the scene version too. But definitely stay tuned for that episode because it is a game changer. Mandy is incredible. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world today. If you are in Southeast Queensland, buckle up. Stay safe, and I'll chat with you next time. Have you been searching for a safe space to connect with other witches and grow and develop and learn together? The Suburban Witches Society will bring you knowledge and friendships that are spiritually aligned, plus a whole heap of fun. You will get access to our private community Facebook group and group chat, which that chat pops off. There are monthly group calls, you get a reading with me, you can do Q&A, and we all just chat and hang out together. It's like a slumber party. You are welcome to wear your pajamas. This is not like fancy influencer witches on a Zoom call. We are very real over here. You can take a peek at behind the scenes episodes of the podcast that are uncut and you get access to them before anybody else. There's a resources section where you get PDF downloads, you get access to classes that are not available to the public. Here is what one of our members, Brandy, has to say about her experience in the Suburban Witches Society. Signing up to the society has been the best present to myself. My witchy knowledge has exploded and I've forged some of the deepest friendships in this group. So come and join Brandy and everyone else in the Suburban Witches Society, meet your new witchy best friend, and get a little bit closer access to yours truly as well. I hope to see you there.